And scene.
And I can't. Yeah,
Hey, we're good. I'm going to send this live.
I can't see any of the Facebook stuff now because I'm using my phone. So,
Don't worry about it. We're live on Facebook. We're ready to go.
hey, how we doing? Welcome back. We had a week last week of couldn't get through on connections, so we're gonna try it again. And then my computer completely froze up and different things. But we're back. Welcoming Matt Etch, Mr. Denmark, Wisconsin, to the show. Matt, I joined rugby back in 1994, and Matt was 1994, and Matt was standing there, and he made me stay. He said I could not leave. They needed another handsome man to join, so I took control and I played. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. Just sorry I couldn't join you last week, but we're a little preoccupied down in the sun. So
yeah, I heard. Where were you?
Cancun.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. It's ridiculous that my family has to see you in the sun, and so then they look at me and like, hey, Dad, nice job.
Well, and again,
anywhere.
they can blame my mother-in-law. She took my whole family and my brother-in-law's her son's whole family. So I'm not a good dad. I'm just a follow-along son-in-law.
That's a great
Nice.
mother-in-law, let me tell you. If mine's listening, which she isn't, that'd be great. Oh, no, but we're excited. We've had on everything from basketball, baseball, soccer, football, and now it's rugby's turn, which is great because that's, as you know, dear to my heart. So we'll start over like back in the day when you played. Now, what years did you play at UW Milwaukee?
I played from 90 to 95 because it takes everybody 5 years to get out of state school. And
Well,
my daughters would tell me that you should have had your master's degree, but no, not quite.
No, master's would have taken us another 4. That's ridiculous. That's 9 years. Yeah. I also took 5 years just to make sure that I was ready for the real world. But now, why back in the day? How did you get involved in rugby? Because back then, right, we didn't have high school.
No.
We didn't have anything. We had a patch of grass down near Lake Michigan. That was about it.
Yeah, well, my whole story, I was walking to class back as a freshman, as I did regularly, maybe got a little less regular later on in my collegiate career, but and they had a booth, and I was a big guy, and they said, hey, big guy, come on over. You want to play rugby? I said, no, I don't. But the third time, I finally said, stop bothering me. I'll come to your meeting. And I went to the meeting, and after a few beverages with guys that you would know by the name of Mutt and Noodles and Mikey, I went home and called my parents and said, hey, I'm going to use your credit card tomorrow. I'm a rugby player now. I got to go buy some cleats. And, and now 30 plus years later, I'm still at it.
Still involved. Now, back in the day, they had great nicknames, right? I mean, because the nicknames have died, through my era. But I mean, you had Mutt, you had Froggy, Mikey was Mikey.
Yeah.
You had Psycho was the coach. You were skinny.
Yeah, I still am. I've got 5-year-olds calling me skinny. I'm 52 years old, and they giggle and go. But yeah, that's still my rugby nickname. I've got hundreds of kids all over northeastern Wisconsin that call me that.
Now, how did you get your I know how you got your nickname, obviously. I mean,
it was I was a big guy, lost a lot of weight working at UPS in college, as people do, and they started calling me skinny. And then I said, hey, I'm too thin to play the position I'm playing at prop, and so I got to gain a little weight, and kind of got back out of control. And now I'm back to skinny. But
never out of control, buddy. Yeah. Never out of control. But how did you get nicknames back in the day? Because we kind of lost everything on the fact.
Yeah, well, and we're still giving out nicknames, and it's stupid. I mean, you can do something dumb. I mean, we got a kid in middle school. They nicknamed him Zeus, and I think it's just he's a big guy that runs through people, so he's like a god. But sometimes it's riffing off of somebody's name, and it rhymes, or it's just one kid. had long flowing locks and came back with a shaved head. So they started calling him Lice. I mean, hey, what else? And that stuck for 2 years. One kid was a wrestler. I won't mention names to preserve the innocent, but he kept getting ringworm from wrestling, and they started calling him Worm. It didn't really stick, but they tried to make that one go. So typically, we're not always politically correct, as some other sports, and we pick on people. So we have fun with it.
Well, some of the, back when I joined rugby at U of Milwaukee, and I got to meet Mutt and Froggy and that. Now the sad part is we've lost a couple.
Yeah.
We lost Froggy, we lost Mikey, we lost Psycho.
Yeah.
Coach, and I'm sure there were others along the way, but
hey, we're getting old.
Good.
See, you got gray hair, I've got gray hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it too.
Now, we got out, right? You got out in 95. I got out somewhere in the 97s. And then you came back to the Green Bay area, Denmark, right? Or no, did you live in Green Bay?
I was in Green Bay when we first got back up here.
And then you decided that you love the sport so much, you're going to take it to high school.
Yeah, again, I loved it, and I wasn't quite ready to step up to be a head coach. I didn't think. I mean, I'm 24-ish years old, and but that was the second year of the high school programs up in the area, and they wanted to expand into Bayport. I said, yeah, I'll help out with that. And 2 weeks before the season, the guy that was going to be the head coach said, yeah, I can't do it. So, hey, kid, you are now the head coach. So they handed me a set of jerseys and said, yeah, go start a team. The two schools available would be Bayport and Pulaski. And I was new to the area. I had no idea that Bayport and Pulaski kind of don't always love each other. So trying to get cross town rivals to play together didn't pan out. Pulaski never came over at that time. That waited for about another 3 years. But I went to my first practice, had one kid. But okay, this is not going to turn out all that well. It was a cold, snowy day, and one kid showed up. He said, I'll get more kids next time. And then the next time we had almost a full practice because Fran Brunette, who was the 189-pound wrestling state champion that year, told the underclassmen on the wrestling team, you will play rugby or else. And so I had a lot of kids that came out, and then Toby, you came on, like year two or three.
Yeah.
But actually, I think you came on year two. Year one, we didn't make state, but year two, when you started with us, I think we made state that year. We made state, like 2 out of the first 4 years. Should have made it 3 out of 4. Got bad beat in a game match and didn't quite qualify for that 1 year. But and now 30 years later, almost 30 years later. The last 3 years, we've been state champions 2 out of 3 years and runners up the other year. So we're still definitely very involved in. And Bayport was our club back then. We've expanded now to the whole west side of Green Bay. Other sports have cannibalized a little bit. I mean, lacrosse started up after we did, and they, I think actually, Toby, doesn't one of your kids play lacrosse now?
My oldest daughter did play last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, but lacrosse wasn't an option, just like we were a niche sport then. So now we pull from multiple teams. But this last year we were in state championship in Pulaski. Again, the who was my goal to have them working with us. Well, 2 years later, Fran, who was my captain, decided to start a team with another guy, and they started Pulaski, and they've had a huge run. They were runners up this year to us. So. It was an all Northeastern Wisconsin tournament this year.
Wow, that's crazy. That's fantastic.
But and then I mean, obviously, for me, the way we were able to win this year is it's tough getting kids to come out to sports. You guys are involved in soccer and other sports. Getting kids that have been in other sports from little on, they identify as soccer players or hockey players, and getting them to try rugby in high school is not always easy. So we made the jump 10 years ago to start Green Bay Youth Rugby. So now we have flag rugby from K through 8. We've got middle school tackle for boys and girls, and we've got high school for boys and girls. So, and Pulaski they don't have flag, but they've got middle school boys and girls, high school boys and girls. De Pere has a middle school boys, high school boys, and then up and down the valley, and Milwaukee and Madison areas as well. As well as I was talking to Jeremy, Spash has a very, very solid girls high school team.
Really?
Yeah, we do have a pretty nice. Carrie
Have
Diamond
you
does.
had any more success getting into high schools? Remember when we were trying to do it, like the football coaches wanted nothing to do with us.
Still don't.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I had to move, better Wi-Fi up here. But but how long did you play then? How long did you continue to play?
I played for 20 years. So I played basically from 90 until 20. I stopped playing full-time late 90s. And my last time I put on the cleats, I think, was 2011. And, as somebody joked, it was the best 8 minutes of my career. I filled in for somebody. They were desperate, and I had my cleats, so I went in. But it wasn't necessarily a planned thing. But I got to my 20-year mark that way.
You still miss it?
Yes, my brain misses. My heart misses it. My brain doesn't. I watch my son play now in college, and I'm going, damn, that looks like it hurts. And as a player, I was always downplaying. It's rough and tumble, but it's not as bad as it looks on the sideline. But again, as I watch these college kids that are 30 some plus years younger than I am, and it's a fast moving sport, and when done right, it's beautiful. When done wrong, it can be a little brutal. But that it doesn't take guys real long, girls real long to figure out that no, I don't lead with my head. Technique is important, and the biggest thing is the ball is a lot faster than a person. So if you're smart, you pass the ball and you find the gap in their defense and you run through it. You don't try to run through people. You run through the gaps.
The best thing, because I've coached a lot of sport, the best part about coaching rugby is not one parent knew what was happening. So now one parent could ever come up to you after the game and say, you should have did a switch back there at the 30-minute mark, right? Nobody knew. So it was fantastic.
That's changed a little bit, but the majority of it is still that way. But now that, again, last year with our state championship team, we had guys that had been playing together since 6th grade. Some of them playing flag together. They had been playing tackle since 6th grade, and many of them had been playing flag since 3rd and 4th grade. So they've been playing together for 8 years. So parents aren't dumb. They do pick up things over almost a decade of watching their kids play. But yeah, we always joke that we're where soccer was in the late 70s, early 80s. That the people that are involved are passionate about it, but lots of other people don't know a damn thing.
I don't know. Your passion is big, but soccer is really big. Big. Look at us morons. We're flying all over the country now.
Well, and again, back when you were coaching, there wasn't opportunities like that. Or when we were in college, it was all about, it was just a social thing for guys to do. But now we had the Badger Selects is actually run by Fran Burnett out of Pulaski, and that's the state select side team. They go to Utah every year. They go to Florida, North Carolina. Boys and girls have separate teams. So there's opportunities for that. We had to travel to Illinois and Iowa as well this last spring. So there are definitely opportunities. It's not as mainstream as soccer, but we also had a couple of our kids just got back from, or some of them are on the way back from a camp in Arizona over Christmas. James Rose, who's a Bayport, go Pirates, your sweatshirt. He just got back from New Zealand. He was playing for the U18 national team 2 weeks ago. He was in Spain earlier in the year. His sister was in Ireland with the IRA, which is the Eagle Impact Academy, again, based out of Arizona. and half the kids that were on the U18 boys national team play for them. So I mean, there are definitely opportunities, and certain families and kids are making the most of them.
That's crazy that it's that nationwide, which is fantastic because it gives people the opportunity, like James, to get into the world. We see a lot of hockey kids come out of here. You know, our neighbors playing over in Czech Republic right now, I think, for crying out loud. But now, when did your son pick up the sport?
Well, James and he both started playing. I think James was first grade, Jonah was second grade when we started the flag program in 2013. And so, yeah, he's been playing since second grade, so 10 plus years. He was one of the first kids playing tackle. I was a dad. I kind of cheated and had him playing tackle in sixth grade back then. It was seventh and eighth grade only, but so he had another year experience. But he was a year older than most of the kids in his class. He's old for his grade. And now we've got fifth and sixth graders playing, and seventh and eighth grade boys and sixth through eighth grade girls. So, but yeah, he's been playing 10 years and now just finished his first year in college along with a couple of his teammates. And we were blessed to have, I think 5 kids playing collegiately from our state championship team last year, and another 4 kids playing college football. So, I mean, we had a very athletic team last year, the last 3 years.
So what is like basketball? They can start chatting. Colleges come in freshman year. They'll start talking AAU. Soccer is June 19th after your sophomore year. What is the high school rugby recruiting process like?
And there's 2 lanes because there are programs that are NCAA, and so they're following typical NCAA rules. So whatever I'm not quite as familiar with that because that's not the path my son went down. A lot more of the girls programs are NCAA because Title IX. I mean, it's a relatively inexpensive sport to run. If you already got a soccer pitch, kitting out a club is not that difficult. You know, jerseys, shorts, socks, and some mouth guards, and you got a club. So women's college teams have a few more NCAA, so they have to follow the same rules. So last couple of years we've had this rugby summit in Oshkosh, and only the seniors could go in and talk to the recruiters that were coming in because just the way that the timing fell. I'm sorry, only juniors and seniors could go in. Whereas with the boys, many of the programs are still club sports and or they're club based and not under the NCAA umbrella. So with my son, he's going to Iowa Central. Iowa Central pulls a lot of kids from Northeast Wisconsin. One of their coaches is from Stevens Point area, actually, and he spends a lot of time up in Wisconsin, and he interacts. So, and it wasn't formal. I mean, so it's not like they're robbing the cradle and going after freshmen, but they're up watching matches. And there's a few bigger schools like that that kind of tie into the coaching networks up here. And then a lot of the rest of it is kids going off to the Badger Selects and some of these other camps and trying to be seen. So again, James going off and playing all over the world. He's got a few more people talking to him than a standard rugby kid in Wisconsin.
Question from James Conley.
Donnelly, sorry, that was my fault.
Does he?
Yeah, I
does
don't.
Matt feel that is it Wallacom? Is there a kid by the name of Wallacom? Am I saying that right? Do you know?
See, I googled this real quick because James Donnelly says is there a
Can you hear me?
the American winger iced Wallacom, and I'm like, I don't know who that is.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you, or I could hear you.
Okay.
I'm not sure who that is either.
Yeah, I'll have Jeremy text me back. He's kind of letting me. There was a question about him playing in the European League. I don't know who that is. Is he good enough? He said ICE, ICE. So we'll see if that's the way it becomes. But let me ask you this: what division or is Iowa Central? Is it a
It's funny. They are a Division I rugby program, but it is a junior college / technical school. So my son's going off. He's getting his HVAC degree because he wants to be in the trades, and so his other option was going to TC and staying local. But we pushed him out of the nest a little bit to go experience life and not just get into the workforce right away. And he's got two of his high school teammates that went with him, and one of them is also going to trades. The other one is basically going for business. So he's doing his his gen eds and the first 2 years, more of the junior college, and then he's going to transfer into a 4 year. So, and the problem for them is competitiveness. They're freshmen and sophomores. A couple third-year players that are coming back to finish up a second, associates or one of their tech programs. But most of their squad is freshman and sophomore, and they're playing against everybody else in their league is a 4 year school. So makes it a little bit more difficult competitive wise, but they've done well. And but there's other kids from the Fond du Lac area playing because University in Northern Illinois or Northern Iowa was top 8. I don't remember if they finished 4th or 5th in the Division II. A couple of our girls are playing from our high school girls squad are playing in college. One went to Eau Claire. Eau Claire is back-to-back national championship. They were in Division II. And last year they beat Marquette in the national championship. So Wisconsin is a powerhouse in collegiate women's rugby. Platteville, we used to play the Platteville men. And we could probably tell stories about that town in our time there, but we won't. But the Platteville women, they were runners up in small school nationally. So they were the second best small school in the nation. So there's a lot of good rugby going on in Wisconsin.
Well, just so you're aware, I'll say it, that Marquette can pound sand. The whole college, the whole rugby team, boys and girls, they can all pound sand. Can't stand them. Except for Chris Farley, but we never – did you ever play with Chris Farley?
No. I played with guys that played against him, but he was there before. I think 87, 88-ish is when he was there. So that was a couple years before me.
It's my only regret. Love to play with Farley. But is rugby still – when we played, when you dragged me around the state, we went to towns and you played like you came in late Friday night, half fueled up on beer, right? In the back seat of someone's van, like you didn't even know who was driving anymore. And then you stayed at a, let's say we went to Whitewater. We'd stay at one of the players' houses. We'd get up Saturday morning. We'd go play, and you'd try to beat the snot out of each other. And then after the game, they would have you to their bar, right? And it didn't matter if you were 18 or 30. You go to the bar. Now, it's back in the early 90s, folks. So don't call the cops. But – right? And then you'd party, and then you'd end up back at a player's house, and you'd get up Sunday and drive home.
Yeah. Rugby, and as a youth administrator, that is the bane of my existence, even though it was so fun for us when we were there. Because the people that know anything about rugby, typically it involves a bar, some drunken idiot, and either singing songs or dumping beer on somebody. And we have to convince moms that no, that's not what you're getting your kids in for. Or on the opposite thing, they think it's just a brutal sport where you're just there to pound the snot out of each other. Again, not the case. But especially at the collegiate level, it is still very it can be social. There's still a meal. So even at Iowa Central, there's no alcohol, but there's always pizza afterwards for the opposing team because, again, that's the tradition of rugby where it's competition on the field and camaraderie off the field. So you try to mend those fences of the guys that you were trying to beat the snot out of, because, again, it is a competitive sport and you're trying to impose your will. But afterwards, some of my best friends and, other than probably the Marquette guys, because I have to agree with you that they weren't my friends, I have a lot of guys that I played against them for years, 20 years in, playing. You get to be good friends with guys after, and you see them, twice a year, and you're going to their weddings and, you're celebrating the birth of their kids. And then, unfortunately, like you said, then they start passing and you go through the whole life. So, and I think that's a a big part about rugby that I love is the fact that it's not just, hey, who was that idiot that I played against? I didn't like him. Now it's you have those lifelong connections. Well, even it was funny. Mentioned being in Cancun last week. So my son met up with some people and he was talking and asked, "Hey, where do you go to school?" Iowa. "Oh, my brother went to Iowa." "Well, where in Iowa?" "Iowa Central." "Oh, you play any sports?" "Yeah, I play rugby." And it was like, no, that's not possible. She called her brother over. He graduated from Iowa Central last year, and he was he was roommates with this year's team captain, who's a buddy of my son. So we're in Cancun, Mexico, and we're running into his former teammates. He didn't know, but they became friends over the weekend because they had connections, and that to me that's rugby.
Yeah, I will say I've had more fun meeting rugby players when we did our Southern tour. You had gotten out of school, but we did Emory, South Florida, and then we skipped our last game and we stayed in Daytona Beach for like 4 days. But if you meet a guy that played rugby, it's instant connection. It was instant, almost like in a job interview. If you said, "Hey, I played rugby," and the guy played, he pretty much canceled everybody else out, right? You were kind of in. And had just a lot of fun. Actually, I was on a boat up in Door County this summer. I was standing in the water. We got invited. We're behind my friend's boat, and I'm standing with it was the 8-man, the fly half, and the outside center from Eau Claire when we played them. And I haven't seen them in 30 years, and we're all sitting having a beer. It's just crazy how it comes around, how much fun it is.
Yeah, and yeah, so it's definitely different in that aspect where it's not just the camaraderie is different because it just carries over, and we always joke that rugby is the biggest fraternity out there because if you're in, you're in, and it doesn't matter where you go. We try to tell our high school kids, even if they're not going on scholarship someplace, if you're going off to college, find that club because you will instantly have a family of people that will understand you immediately, and you have a structure to move into versus going off to a new school and not having anybody.
I agree. I think that it was that made my time at UW-Milwaukee so much just incredible fun. I had a great time in school, and I was going to have a great time in school, but it really really facilitated my great time in school.
But back to your original point, the game has changed. It has become more serious. It is the sport first versus, many times, we joke that we were a social club that happened to play rugby, or a beer drinking club in college that, and again, I wouldn't change that back then, but for us to continue to grow and, as I'm trying to convince moms to let the kids play rugby, that is not the sport anymore. Now it's the opportunities that our kids are getting, going off to college, scholarships, and the like, and U18 national team, and trips to Ireland and in Spain, and really back to the basics. Because again, you guys talk about youth sports. In my opinion, too many sports, and again, at the higher level, my son was select side, and he did the travel, and that cost money. But so many youth sports now, it's pay to play, in my opinion, and we try to make rugby, especially the flag program, available to anybody. We obviously we have costs to cover and we charge fees, but if somebody can't afford it, we'll figure out a way to find a sponsor and we'll support that because I don't want kids to lose out on the ability to, one, have fun because our core values, fun is still one of them, but leadership, teamwork, respect that has to come with that, and fighting for the excellence to try to be better every day. And then last one we try to focus on is integrity. Do what you say you're going to do and follow through on it. And if we could follow through on those 6 core values, our goal is to turn out better kids, not just win the game today. As you go higher up in our high school program, it's you have to earn your right on the field, but your playing time is not guaranteed. At the younger levels, our flag, it's equal. Everybody, we set the teams up equally. We don't have a first team and a second team. we split the teams up. We go to tournaments. Everybody plays, and even our tackle middle school teams. Yeah, you might get a little bit more playing time, but everybody's going to play, and you're going to get experience. Well, you remember, Toby, we had guys that were coming out as freshmen that couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time, and by the time they were seniors, they were rock stars.
Yep.
And too many sports, they're cutting people in sixth grade. It's like, how do you cut a sixth grader that hasn't hit puberty yet? You don't have no idea what they're going to turn into, and you turn them off because you don't give them any playing time at all. And we just don't believe that that's the right way. And we're also not spoiled. We don't have thousands of kids that want to play, so we have to develop the ones that we have, and it's turned out really well for us.
Yeah, one thing that when you mentioned that I'm sure when you called your parents and I called mine and said, "Hey, I'm going for this. I'm going to play rugby, right? I need a mouth guard. I need $1.82, and I'm going to borrow some guy's cleats that I've never met." And like you go and you watch violent collisions all over this God's green earth, but once you get into a middle of a rugby game, it's crazy how different the sport is, right? You don't lead with your head. You don't try to snap the top of your head into some guy's sternum. You learn how to tackle. You learn, and I think the most successful football teams, if I recall, Fran did very well with Pulaski back in the day on teaching kids how to tackle. And football teams that in the '90s that embraced rugby had a lot of success on defense because they learned how to tackle without just spearing everybody. And that's one thing I've always tried to tell people. Rugby isn't violent. I mean, that's why you wear a mouth guard. Just that's it. Because you really now, I've been in some on-field altercations where the mouth guard comes in handy from getting punched in the face 10 times. But I wore the mouth guard more going out after with Mikey than I had to wear during the game because you never knew what you were going to be in a back alley getting beat on by some guy.
Yeah. We could develop this into a tell Mikey stories all night long, but
yeah, right.
Yeah, but you're right. And I said it earlier. It looks a lot worse than it is, and it's even hard for me to remember, like I said, because I look at these young guys playing it. It's like they're going fast, and that's got to hurt. But again, I played for 20 years. I broke my nose twice, but lots of bumps and bruises. You definitely know you played the next day. But to your point, we get football kids in. They don't hit with their head very often. I mean, the once or twice that they do it because that's what they used to be taught. Technique is everything, and in rugby, there's a lot of typically more slow motion collisions than high speed collisions because you're taking a step or two and you're getting hit by somebody. So you're not always getting up to full speed. Not that it can't happen, but still, technique. You use your shoulder, not your head, and you wrap. You have to wrap. You can't spear people, and that makes those collisions that much safer. And I mean, there have been studies done. Rugby is safer than football. I mean, heck, soccer, you get concussions with heading the ball. I mean, there's but and not to say that we haven't had kids get hurt. Kids can get hurt, and that's the worst part of any youth sport. But my son went from wrestling to rugby to football, and honestly, and even I am biased, I'll be the first one to admit it, less injuries in rugby than in the other ones. I mean, football, the helmet is a weapon, and people use it as a weapon, and extending the limbs, broken arms, and everything else, and I love wrestling, and it was great for my son, and he misses it, but that is brutal. I mean, that is physically one-on-one imposing your will and bending people's arms, ways, and joints to get them to submit. It's great, but don't tell me that it's for the faint of heart, because it's in personal opinion, it's worse than rugby. But it's great for you. I mean, and I love rugby or wrestlers that come out and play rugby because their fitness is up. They can tackle because a single leg takedown, a double, two-legged takedown, that's a tackle. I mean, that's what they're doing. So it's and the mental toughness that comes out of wrestlers, it's amazing. And even our girls team now that girls wrestling is coming up, we're seeing a lot of crossover between that, and it's great for us.
Yeah, you know, when you start talking about like in football, it's all about yardage, right? I need so many yards first down. And in rugby, it's just you play, and the
Yep.
game doesn't come down to that. So bringing a guy into you and falling, not using his momentum is a lot. You know, then trying to just constantly take people backwards. You really learn that. You know, you learn it quick, and you learn how to use your legs instead of your neck. And but man, it's just a sport. Plus, nobody like how long did it take to learn the rules? Like the true, like I don't think I could ever sir a match. Like I couldn't go out there with a whistle because I still don't know half the rules, and I played for 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, there are intricacy, and they're not rules; they're laws. So
Right.
But and my biggest complaint is the ever changing laws of the game because for rugby people, you talk about some of the major things. The scrum is a big part, and Toby, you were in the middle of that. The scrum is basically useless these days because you can. For those of you that don't know rugby, that's when all the big guys come together. They put the ball between, and the stronger team pushes over. Well, back in the day, you had to put the ball in between the two groups. Now you can feed the ball basically back behind the second row of the scrum, and the offensive team hardly ever loses the ball. And to me, that defeats kind of the purpose of the scrum. But yeah, the intricacies of the laws, there are definitely, and again, I've been around 30, going on 30 years, 35 years. The rules still, there are intricacies that, wait a minute, why'd they call that? And then you go back and you look, oh, that's why, subsection B, part 3, this is why, under this circumstance, on a day that ends in Y, this is what you got to do. But for those non-rugby players out there, it's pretty basic. You take the ball, you run forward, you pass backwards, you score the ball in the try zone, and you get a try, but you actually have to touch the ball down. So that's where the football term touchdown comes from. Rugby evolved from soccer, and American football evolved from rugby. So the line of scrimmage comes from the word scrum. Touchdown comes from actually touching the ball down in rugby into the try zone. Because back when it was first invented, that didn't count for anything, but it gave you an attempt to kick an extra point or a kick for points. And now a try is worth 5 and a conversion is worth 2, so you still get to the same 7 that football has. 3 points for a penalty, or in football terms, a field goal. You can still drop kick for points from anywhere on the field, and I'm not sure if rugby still or football still has that rule, but at one point you could still drop kick in football. But again, because it evolved, the Grey Cup in Canada, if you go back far enough, that was a rugby championship. So there's little bits of rugby sprinkled in throughout football.
Well, that's why it's so great. What was I going to ask? Just on the fact that I still go back to my first game. I threw the most amazing block in O'Connell. I came around the corner, and I just bam, and I'm like, follow me, right? And then the whistle blows, and that's the weirdest. Trying to explain it to people, right? You run forward, pass backwards, and then you got to hustle backwards to get the ball again after you ran forward.
Yeah, and part of the, back to the safety. That's why there aren't as many uncontrolled injuries in football. You can get hit anything. You got to keep your head on a swivel because anybody anywhere can get hit, blocked or whatever else. There's no blocking in rugby, so the only person that theoretically can get hit is the one with the ball. So you should be prepared to get hit if you have the ball. Everybody else, you have to get behind to support. But yeah, to your point, getting out in front and blocking, yeah, that's a bit of a no-no, and that's a penalty. But again, just like tackling with your head, football guys learn that, it doesn't take real long for most of us.
Right. And the one thing I tried to bring to youth female soccer is marking kids. Like if they come in hot, right, and take you out, we used to get together on the field or the pitch and be like, all right, number 12, he's marked. And then anytime number 12 gets on the ground, I take my pretty little cleats and I run him down his back. Now I don't know if that still goes today as we did in our day.
I don't think it's as prevalent, but do they know who did what to whom, and do they understand that? And again, the older you get, the more that happens. So collegiate, I'm sure it's more prevalent. I mean, middle school, no, that's not a thing. High school, some of the older players probably keep track. And do they figure out that there's only one referee on the field and there's 30 kids? Yeah, they figure that out. And some kids are known to be instigators because it's never the kid that irritates the guy that gets in trouble. It's the reciprocator that is the one that the referee typically sees, because by that time somebody's making a noise and they have to look, and then they see the second person. So there are definitely players that like to instigate things, and they might speak whisper sweet nothings in people's ears, and then suddenly the referee sees the after effects of that. But yeah, I mean, back in the day, yeah, there was definitely. I still remember this kid high tackled me like 3 times, and I say kid, I was 30 years old, and he was probably 24, 25. And he high tackled me a couple times, and then the next, he was at the bottom of the next ruck, and I put my boot on him, and he came up to me after the game and said, "Look what somebody on your team did," and he had cleat marks down his chest. And I said, "Yeah, don't high tackle people." And I was, and I think you'll probably remember. I mean, I think I got Mr. Nice Guy award one year because I wasn't that type of player. But so he had to do a lot to get under my skin. But you do police the opponents once in a while, and you figure out if somebody's a bad player or they're doing damage to people that they shouldn't be. You try to educate them and tell them not to do that.
And that's what I really loved about the sport. I mean, we finished, I think, a whitewater game in Milwaukee down by the lakeshore, and it was a full-out brawl. I mean, we were knuckles deep in each other's faces, and all of a sudden the ref called the game, right? I forget who won, didn't matter. And we all were like, "Where are we going?" And we're like, "We're going to Judges." And everybody went to the bar, and everybody took their cleats off, and we drank beer for the next 13 hours. And we'll get to the songs, because if you try singing songs today, you're going to go to jail.
That's almost that's a very, 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 very limited, and usually with only people that are even older than us. That's not really a thing anymore.
No. We did have a song breakout with some buddies the other day, and we kept it quiet just for the people around us. But we used to sing to the high heavens, right? It was an hour and a half of singing, and the way rugby songs work for people out there is somebody starts it, and then there's different verses, and there's different lines, and like there's verses that you've never heard before, and then if you screw up a song, somebody hands you their cleat, and they pour beer in their boot, and then you have to pound a beer out of somebody's boot,
shoot the boot,
just on their foot for 2 hours, which was absolutely disgusting, but you did it.
Jeremy's going, "What the hell is wrong with you guys?"
And that's what I
pretty
love
amazing
about the sport, right? I love the party. I love but I love the want to get with my brothers and drink beer and hoot and holler. And I know kids are different today. My kids are different today, right? They don't go sit in a cornfield and drink beer. It's just not part of who they are and what they are. But man, I would go back to those days in a heartbeat and sit at Judges from 2:00 in the afternoon till 4 a.m. when Mike Lee would kick us out, and then we'd drive around until something else happened at 6 a.m. It was fantastic.
And and again, the bar owners like Mike Lee, God bless him, because now he sold the bar and that place it's an empty street corner now. But that was my home for 4 years. In fact, we were talking about that with some people that I was at a family gathering yesterday, and there were people from Milwaukee, and that was part of our experience. And the fact is, it was a good business for him, because middle of the afternoon, 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon, nobody's there in a college town. Nobody's at his bar anyway. So if we were singing songs, he didn't care, because we weren't going to irritate anybody other than other rugby players. This day and age, sometimes, unfortunately, some of those songs I cringe at thinking about. Some of them were a lot of fun, but some of them were like, "Oh my goodness, what were we thinking?" some of my well, again, you were the rugby queen. We won't go into any lyrics, but my grand march, the Mikey led the grand march, and that was the rugby queen song with the words changed to sing nice things about my wife versus what they would have said about somebody else that was in that position. So, but I was scared because I knew the real words, and I was afraid that he or somebody else on the team would break out into, a normal rugby song.
I mean, it just, I don't know who came up with them, but in one of the verses that sticks with me, and I'll say it, and I'll go to hell.
Oh, God.
But that Jesus can't play rugby because he's got holes in his hands. I mean,
and that's by far not the worst lyric of anything that you could have brought up. So yeah,
not even close. But when I all of a sudden I'll be driving and something will hit the tune, and I'll be like, Jesus can't play rugby, and then all of a sudden I'm 4 verses deep by myself, and I'm like, all right, that's enough.
Yeah, but again, some of the best friends I'll ever have were those guys on that UWM squad. It doesn't matter. So 30 years later, I don't see them very often, but when I do, it's a good time.
Did you work? Did you stay down there during the summer?
Yeah.
Of your later, did you ever work at Corch moving?
Yeah, I always had a full. I worked at UPS, all throughout the year, but. Yeah, Mutt would get me up to, I'd get home at 4 a.m., sleep until 6, and then he'd say, hey, we need an extra body today. So I was a fill-in guy. But, yeah, I definitely had to move furniture a couple times with those guys.
It's funny because you didn't realize it at the time, right? You when you were 18, 19, or 20, it didn't matter. You went to Judges, so you got acclimated there, and you started to know Tony and all the guys, right? Also, all the bartenders, and then – you're like, okay, I'm hanging out at a bar. I'm underage. This is great. And then all of a sudden this summer, you're like, what do you mean I have a job? I didn't even know I wanted to work. And next thing you know, you're moving somebody's furniture on a Saturday for probably $8 an hour. And then you go and we would take all the coupon books off of everybody's porches in our neighborhood because you could buy a 12-pack of Pabst for $2.99. And every day you drank a 12-pack of Pabst, and then you'd get up and you'd feel terrible, and then you'd sweat it out, and then you'd go to practice, and Tom Psycho would come in, and he would make you run and hate everybody, and that's what you did. And it was fantastic.
Yeah, because that you talked about that brawl after the one match. That must have been after my time, because earlier in my career there was another one, but. With a guy by the name of Psycho being your coach, does it surprise you that you might have had some brawls with your club?
One of the greatest Tom stories, and I miss Tom. I love talking to Tom. Tom passed 2 years ago now. I think it was 2. And I was sitting at Judge's bar with him, and I forget who we played. And this was after your time. And it was Tom and this other guy. And this other guy was getting awfully mouthy. And Tom was didn't want to fight. I could see Tom listen, I don't want to do this. But the guy kept going, and Tom said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you 3 punches. And if I'm still standing after 3 punches, you're dead to me. And Tom stood up. The guy hit him 1, 2, 3. Tom looked at him, and I've never seen a guy turn and run so fast in my life. It was fantastic. Tom didn't even faze him. Didn't faze him. I am just wide-eyed. I'm probably 22 years old. Scared out of my mind that the guy's going to punch me and my face is going to shatter. But it was just, Tom was a different man. Man, did that guy love rugby.
Yeah, and not a typical accountant, that's for sure.
Right. That was the best part, right? During the week, he was crunching numbers. And on the weekend, he was sleeping in the passenger side of his truck so they didn't arrest him for drinking and driving. Genius. But we've had some good ones. I mean,
yeah.
Do you still keep in touch
did you
with
ever meet Dick?
Oh.
Dick Cummings?
Yeah, he was my neighbor down there.
So Dick was a 60-year-old college professor that when we were short players and before you got there, he would jump in with us, and so he's 60 years old and he's playing with 21, 22-year-old kids. But he was our, I guess. On campus, he was the representative with the university to make sure that we were blessed and legal.
So after your time, we had Jim Daly ran for student president, and he got like 30 votes. So he
Pre-game.
won, right? There's pre-game. That was one of the great nicknames. Was pregame.
I was there when he got
was
that because the house that we stayed at was one of my best friend's brother's house, and it was at Stevens Point Arctic Fest, and we were going to play at like 8:00. He must have got up at 6:00, and he was ready to go, dressed, ready to play at 6 a.m. So from then on, he was pregame.
That was one of those. So he becomes student body president. We then go in front of the student council, and we present to them that we need $5,000 because we're taking a rugby team to Savannah for a tournament for the Goodwill. Jim Daly rubber stamps that bad boy. We rented 2 minivans. We took 17 guys in 2 minivans, and we played the St. Patty's Day tournament, which we were there for a whole week.
Well, don't stop now.
It was. What's that?
Well, you froze up for a second, so I didn't hear the rest of it. I said, don't stop now.
No. So we get the school to take us. And I already told the story about Cole, how I showed Cole a gravel pit coming out of Chicago, and I told him it was Grand Canyon, but that's for a different day. He took a lot of photos. But playing Savannah for a week, in our last game, we were like 2-2. We spent St. Patty's Day down on River Street, partied all night. We are going to get up and we're going to just drive home. And I am sleeping on the floor in a closet because we only had 2 rooms. I mean, we didn't they gave that much money. And I look up, and in my worst nightmare, Tom Schmidt drove down, and he is like, "Get up, we're playing." And I'm like, "Nope, not doing it." Sure enough, we all went out there and played terrible. We played Eastern Tennessee, I think. It didn't matter. But it was the worst. And like, I'm like, "Where did you come from?" He's like, "I drove down." And I'm like, "Go home." But that wasn't in his nature, so he made us play. I still blame him. Still blame him for that. Lucky I didn't die.
One of my last, because as I was leaving, we played back at Arctic Fest, another Arctic Fest story, and it was like 30 below with the wind chill. It was his first season coaching us, and I was captain, and I was young, and we ended in a tie. Came down to the kicks afterwards for the tiebreaker, and I'm yelling at my buddy, "If you make those kicks and we have to play tomorrow, I'm going to kick your ass," because it was I'm not kidding. It was like 30 below, and we were out there, and I just wanted to go back to. And again, I was the super senior that had been around forever, and said, "Okay, I love rugby, but I don't want to play in 30 below weather." And he was mad at me because, damn it, if we're going to play to win, and we're going to play tomorrow. Okay, that's why I'm getting out of school and going to play men's league, and you're going to keep coaching these guys because this is not important. Luckily he missed, and I didn't have to worry about it. But yeah, I don't think Psycho ever forgave me for that.
Did you play? Was it on campus or was that at Rusty's?
That was on campus. The last year of on campus.
Yeah, I remember. That was my first year at Arctic Fest, and then they kicked us all off campus to Rusty's. Do they still have Arctic Fest?
No, it's been a few years, or more like a decade, or more. But which is a shame because that was fun. But again, going back to the stories we told about the shenanigans, I can understand why they don't have it anymore, especially that poor VFW building, because I think that was the year that your first year was the last year on campus, and it was still at the VFW. And when the beer was coming from the first floor into the basement, they decided that they didn't want the rugby guys back.
Which is ridiculous. Let the guys have their fun. And then we went out to Rusty's, and that was in the middle of nowhere. And then everybody drive downtown Stevens Point, and there were, 3 bars downtown?
Yeah.
I learned a lot about life down there.
Bruisers.
Buffy's, yes. Yep.
Bruisers, the dance club, Buffy's, and what was the other one? But Buffy's Lampoon.
The one with the wooden picnic tables that were just, they were 7,000 pounds, thank God.
You guys really picked the nice places.
If too many people stood on the one side and they flipped up, then you fell down. And I still remember a buddy of mine, because it was all bottled beer. Let's just say there was broken glass all over the floor. When that flipped up, he landed on some of it, and it was not good having to find somebody to pull the the broken beer out of his butt.
Well, because nobody could drive him to the hospital, that's for sure.
Well, we weren't going to the hospital. It wasn't bar time yet. Come on. Like, again, you're making me tell all these stories of how bad things were, and now nobody's going to want to try it, today. Again, go back to your. This was the early '90s.
Yeah, that's what made us. I mean, we used to recruit. We always joke because we recruited from judges in the bar, and then the good teams recruited from the weight room. And then when I got out of school, even UW-Milwaukee switched gears, and they started to play high level.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, national champion tournaments. They were playing Notre Dame. They were playing, Northwestern. We were playing anybody that was in like a 3-hour radius that we could make it to because our cars weren't great, right? I mean, so
yeah, COVID hooked up a little bit. They were in the top 20 in the Division II for several years.
Man, that's great. I'll take credit, and I think you should take some credit too. I mean, we kind of set the building blocks up so they could go around them and do better. Have you been down to a game?
UWM, I went. It's been a little while. They had the 50th this last year, and it wasn't. I mean, it was more getting some old boys together. Not the 50th. They had the 40th, 83 to 20. Yeah, 83 to 23. 40th. And actually, so Mikey's been gone 4 years now. So the last time I went to a regular match was the fall season 4 years ago, because that's the last time I saw Mikey. My daughter was moving into UWM. His daughter was moving in, so we went and watched the match, and then had a few drinks afterwards. But then Christmas. I mean, we just hit the anniversary of his passing. Again, 4 years, but so that's the last time I was at a regular match, and I had a couple of kids for my high school team that were playing for them at that time. So it was a good day, but I've not been back. COVID, and quite honestly, with my son playing, and then this last year between high school in the spring, high school girls in the fall, and my traveling. When Iowa Central 6.5 hours away, and so it's 6.5 one way for a home game, and we went to all of his matches this year. It was a long fall.
Yeah, I can imagine. As we get, and this is a problem with this podcast, right? We're an hour in. I mean, we can keep rolling. This is why I love doing it, because it's fun to chat. And but you've been a huge part of Green Bay men's rugby, the school rugby, and now you've gone and so our soccer program is growing. I think we're 1,000+ kids. I mean, we have a really big foundation, but we're in the need of down the road of getting our own land and starting the process of that. So you've been involved in that. What has been the biggest hurdle in getting? Besides, money is always the key, right? So you've raised, you said, about $500,000.
Yep.
And you're looking for $1 million more. So if
anybody's roughly.
Yeah.
So the impetus to that, it's just like you guys, the growth. When we went from having 3 high school teams in the area to now we have, like I talked about, all the flag teams, all the middle school teams from various area clubs, and then the multiple high school teams, boys and girls. Just space is at a premium, and we are not soccer, so we don't have the same connections. We've got some good relationships. The Village of Bellevue has been good to us with Willow Creek Park, Howard, Barney Williams Park, but mainly because nobody else wants it because it's low, it's wet, and it's unplayable at times. We love it when the weather's good, but it's not always great in spring. So we Cottage Grove down in the Madison area, the Madison area rugby clubs came together about 15 years ago, and they bought about 8 acres in Cottage Grove next to a village park there. And they now have 2 full-size rugby pitches, but the town also, or village, has a couple more soccer fields outside their area. They put up a roughly $2 million, $1.5 to $2 million clubhouse with locker rooms and changing, and then a big social area upstairs where they can hold banquets and people can have weddings and other things there. and then they have decks looking out on top of those fields. So we saw that and said, hey, we want to do something like that. And they've been great to work with because they're telling us, hey, here are the mistakes we made. So we started looking probably 6 years ago, for a community partner. So then that's worked real well for them. And we found the town of Lawrence, and Lawrence has been wonderful. We are working with them. In fact, when I get done with you guys, I got to finish reviewing the purchase agreement. They've got the lot set out. It's zoned. All the planning is done. Now we just have to get the purchase agreement finished and write them a check for the first payment. And we're going to have a little over 10 acres right behind the town hall there. It's kind of the same plan. We're going to have 2 fields of our own. The town is looking to put up a couple other fields. Sports Emporium is working on moving in next door to that. So they're going to have a new building, and then ISA baseball, softball is down the street from that. So it's going to be a huge mecca for youth sports. And for me, I'll take the cast off. So, all the baseball teams and the soccer teams, that they got that one kid that's not quite the same as the rest of them that wants to play something else, and we'll get them to play rugby. Because they'll drive by us and we'll have that much more visibility. But yeah, it is a process. So my recommendation would be to find that community that wants to work with you. We, even though we're talking big money, that's still, we're still going to be doing a lot of stuff on, with partnerships and friends in the community that will help do, because until I started doing the plan, I think, okay, the building's going to be the most expensive part. Moving dirt and getting irrigation, and that is expensive as heck. And that is the key to having good long-term fields. We aren't doing any artificial. I think you guys have had some conversations about artificial versus grass. We can't afford the initial cost of artificial, not to mention I think playing tackle on artificial with no pads and helmets is not a great long-term thing. It would be great for those spring practices where we can't get out on the fields or they're too wet, too muddy. But we would prefer to be playing on natural turf, and that's what we're going to be doing. So once we hope to be moving dirt this spring, and we're going to focus on the fields first before we even get to the concession stands and bathrooms and everything else. We are working with a couple different. We've got a couple of big sponsors. The 2 fields do have naming rights sponsors already. The Villages of Companies in Pulaski donated for the primary field, and then Bernatello's Foods, lots of matzo pizza out of the valley. They are naming rights on the secondary pitch, and so they've got yearly commitments for the next couple of years to help us with that. So that's going to go a long way to developing those fields, but we still have a lot of work to do to find those sponsors. And the next push will be after we get the land under contract, because we've been talking about it for so long. Before we go out and ask for more money, we wanted to show that it's real, and we're going to have fields and the land in our name.
Yeah, it's hard to keep asking, right, if there's no growth.
Right.
Yeah, and then we've looked at turf for anywhere from $1 to $1.2 million for a turf soccer pitch. So yeah, that throws, and I could see absolutely that rugby would be better. It is better off on grass. There's no need for turf, and to deal with that mess. So, but that's a great location.
Yeah, no, and I mean, there's still acres out there. So I mean, go talk to them. I mean, they'll put a pin in a pitch for that town. They've been great to work with, and for us, there's a big rugby community in the valley too. So we're as close to Bayport there as to Appleton North. So we expect that there'll be some crossover and some potential use from the clubs in the valley as well.
Yeah, so we have right off Ballard at USA Shields Park is our Appleton campus. Then we have Southwest Park in De Pere, and then we've got a Howard campus. So yeah, that's kind of right where our thought process is too, is directly in the center. But we're looking at 50, I don't even know, 40 acres, and then just have the ability to build on 10. And
wow,
I was going to win the lottery, but I didn't. So it doesn't help.
Well, when you win the lottery, don't forget about your old friends in the rugby community.
Absolutely. No, so that's kind of our, and that's kind of we have to start a goal in our club. And I know you guys have had it out there for quite a while. And that's why I really wanted to ask is how many years has it taken to get to this point now to sign the agreement on the land? I mean, you've been at it for how many years?
Well, the dream has been out there for a long, long time, but we've been active probably in the last 5 years is where 5 years ago is when we really started looking at what communities we want to work with. And we talked to a lot of the local ones, and nothing against Green Bay, but Green Bay's landlocked. Ashwaubenon's landlocked. You're not going to find farmland in those areas. And if you're talking that kind of acreage or our kind of budget, there's no way we could afford to buy land in those areas, even though in some ways it'd be nice. But so we were looking at the rural communities, the Bellevues, the Ledgeviews, and Lawrence just had this vision of having some youth sports all come together, and those other groups, have come in around that same time or a little bit after, and it's just kind of come together, and they were willing to buy that land. So the town actually owns the land, and they're selling it to us. Whereas if we had to buy that land when they did, one, we didn't have the money, and nothing's gone down in price over the last 5 years. So we would have had to, have raised even more money than we have now and put more of it towards the land. So they've been, again, very, very good to work with. But they're looking at it as the development. If they can get that many kids coming into an area for all these different sports, and hopefully getting some overrun. If our parking lot's not being used, let the soccer community use it when there's a big event going on, or the baseball, and vice versa. But it's not easy fundraising, and so cast that net wide, get lots of people on that board that want to help, and know that it's going to take a lot of no's to get a few yeses.
Yeah, no. That's kind of what my thought is too, is just to get started. And because we've been to like Rantoul down by Champaign. We've seen some where you put a field, whether it's football, rugby, lacrosse, that exit goes in, that hotel goes up, that restaurant comes in.
Yep.
The hotel, and all of a sudden the community, and I think Lawrence has that vision of growth where some communities just lock down. They're like, that's not going to help us. And you're like, well, give it time. Everything happens.
And our development on its own wouldn't have helped them probably that as much, because it's still a niche sport. But you're talking many more fields, and soccer definitely more. And but then with us being able to come in and be an additional puzzle piece to those other developments, it all works in the town's favor. And I think long term it's going to when you start having multiple, baseball and soccer, and my biggest concern is those weekends that we're all doing something. It'll be interesting down there.
Yeah, right. And then then all of a sudden everybody gets mad, but that's what it's for. It's for excitement like that. Can you see? Jeremy's frozen on my screen. Can you see him?
Yeah, he's still.
Is he muted?
I don't know if he's muted. He's smiling.
Is he? All right, because we're pushing about an hour and 10, and that's trying to what we keep it. But man, I appreciate you coming on. It's been fantastic. We haven't talked like this in forever, and the rugby's been near and dear to me, and I'm glad we can share it with our people, and hopefully now to all the best listeners and their children, what's the best way to get in touch with you to play rugby?
Email Matt at Green Bay Youth Rugby, all spelled out, or just Green Bay Youth Rugby .org. Link to that, and do a Google search to find us on Facebook. I mean, we're not that hard to find if you're looking. Maybe people aren't looking, but if you look for us, you can find us.
And we'll throw it out on our Facebook page too, because it is. I am a soccer dad now. I'll be dead honest, but rugby is fantastic. Youth, boys, girls, flag, start out. Some of my best friends are from the sport, guys that I remember, and still growing up, and still to this day, like you said, having a beer, pretending to sing songs so we don't go to jail.
Well, and just so you know, some of the guys you coached are still involved. So remember Brian Tilke?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, he's still playing for the men's team, and in fact, he might be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, moving some of the dirt. He's a heavy equipment operator, and he's talking about being able to move some of the dirt for us. So,
That's awesome.
the seeds you helped plant back in the late '90s, they're still out there.
Hey, one quick question, then we'll let you go. We had practice over Bayport practice early spring. You weren't there. We did it Chambers, behind Chambers.
Yeah.
And a kid shows up, and I'm like, hey, you got to sign the waiver. And he's like, I don't have the waiver. And I'm like, yeah, let's just play it, right? When he broke his wrist, I thought we were going to lose the whole program that day, but evidently his dad was pretty nice.
Yeah, and I thought I think I was there, but I thought it was a collarbone. And we said you can run along with us, but you can't participate in any tackle. and he tripped and fell and either broke his collarbone or broke his wrist. And I was with you. I'm going, that's why we sign off on the stuff. But I agree with you. I mean, as long as he doesn't do the tackle stuff. But yeah, that it didn't hurt us. And the dad laughed and, yeah.
Thank God that was back in the early 2000s, because we'd both be in jail today with that one too.
Yeah, and again, I mean, unfortunately, for most of the parents, that would still be the case. But some parents, well, what do you mean you let my kid play rugby? I didn't say it was okay. I still remember kids sneaking out of from other teams, sneaking out of their, they were soccer. In fact, I'll call him up by name because he runs the damn sports program now. I think it was Derek Rhodes. It was either Derek or his brother. They both played big soccer guys, still big soccer guys, but they both played for De Pere. And they were sneaking up because their dad didn't want them to play. And I was very hopeful that they wouldn't get out of the house because the one time we didn't go to state that I said it was a bad beat because that kid beat us on a last play of the game kick and won the game. Only because he snuck out of the damn house and, disobeyed his parents. And it really irritates me to this day. Because
that's funny because Drew Rhodes is my daughter's coach now, me and Jeremy's daughter's coach.
So yeah, and I forget which one of them it was, but it was a Rhodes, and they were rugby fans and they enjoyed playing, but they were still soccer first. But I don't think their dad, who I believe was a big soccer guy too, probably a coach, was a huge fan of them playing because I think he was afraid they were going to get hurt. But yeah, bring it up because I forget which one it was, but one of them definitely. Kicked the game-winning kick in the last seconds of the match that kept us from going to state.
Oh, I will bring it up because Dusty's a part of our club and Drew, and then Derek, like you said, runs the sports program, so very soccer-oriented. So that's good. I can have some fun with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's only been 30 years, and I'm still bitter, but hey.
Hey, Skinny, it doesn't sound it, buddy. You sound great. Sound extremely happy.
Well, thanks for having me on. And if you ever want to talk rugby, I can do it. And Jeremy, if you ever need some dirt on Toby, I can probably come up with that too.
I like it.
You still drinking Colorado Bulldogs, Toby? Because you introduced me to those.
I haven't had one in 30 years. Or whenever you left, what was it? It was Bailey's, Kahlua, vodka, and Coke.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was basically a White Russian with Coke.
Yeah. Still great. By the pint glass, right?
Exactly.
I forgot about those. I might have to make one tonight. All right. Jeremy, are you still around?
Yes. You know what, though? I don't know if I can stop this bad boy without leaving. So I'm going to do something real quick here.
I'll have him sign off. Let me text him here. And you sign off. All right. And then we'll wrap it up. If you would stick, he jumped off, so he'll sign.
No, I think he had to sign off. He said he was having a hard time, but shutting down. So now he's back.
Okay, good.
Were you able to stop it?
No,